Welcome to Thriving Entrepreneur with your host, Steve Kidd, third-generation minister and 30-year business coach. Listen in as amazing, world-changing authors, speakers, and coaches share their struggles and victories. And hear from best-selling authors insight into how you too can live your life as a thriving entrepreneur.
This is Steve. Welcome to Thriving Entrepreneur. Thanks for being with me here today as we talk to you and show to you a new look at things. You know, often when we just take the time to look at the same old thing in a different way, we can discover some very cool, very fun, and often very innovative kind of things. And today we're going to do that in multiple different ways. Both starting us off, we're going to share a story that may be something that you grew up hearing from a completely different standpoint, taking some modern technology and some new concepts and adding it into what if a story you heard about what the future could look like really actually is true. We're then going to look at some new ways of leveraging data and new innovative approaches to cybersecurity. We want to really be able to spend the time today to encourage you and inspire you to take a new look at things. There may be some things in your own life, in fact, that you have done the same way for a really long time, and maybe you need to just look at, in just a little different way. And that new look at things can make all the difference. By the way, thanks so much for being here with us. I am Steve Kidd, your host. I am so excited to have you as part of Thriving Entrepreneur with us here today. If this is your first time listening, we're so glad to have you. We're not quite at 10 years yet, but we're real close. You can go to wehelpyouthrive.com and see all of the episodes, and we're also on YouTube and Apple Music and Spotify and here on Blog Talk and any of the other places you can find us. We're there. We're kind of hard to get rid of. We, though, really just want to celebrate you being here and help you take a new look at things to be able. That's what I meant, yeah. To really, truly be able to look at some of the things you're doing. Even as I'm saying this, even as I'm presenting this to you, I'm finding myself thinking about some of the things that I've been doing. I've been in a marketing company for 37 years and worked with authors for the last 17. And I've got some new and innovative things that have been going through my mind as I've been prepping for this show and putting all of these different elements together. And I'm excited to introduce some of those to you here over the course of the next month or so. But what could you come up with when you take a new look at things? How can you be a thriving entrepreneur right in the place that you are, being exactly who you are by just simply taking a new look at things? So today, let's join together. Let's thrive in all we're doing, and let's take a new look at things and see what kind of amazing and cool stuff we can come up with as we all work together and strive and thrive to be a thriving entrepreneur. With that stated, let's jump right in to our first guest. Join me in welcoming Sean O'Neill. Hey, Sean, how you doing today?
I am doing great today, Steve. Thank you for having me on.
So glad to have you here with us. Start us off by telling us just a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, interestingly, I'm Canadian, first off, born and raised in Montreal. So I grew up in French and then converted to English and then moved through my career to Toronto, where I actually was an IT executive. I have an MBA from Schulich School of Business here in Toronto and spent the better part of 30 years in the IT world before one day waking up and saying at 52 years old, there's got to be more to life than this. While I had a good career, it was the consistency, right? It was the same thing over and over and over again. And I felt that I was missing out on perhaps a an opportunity to be something different in this world. So I left at 52, and I've spent the last 7 years building both a book and a film business. So I am on to novel number 15, which will be coming out late September. I've written 7 films. I've won probably a couple of dozen awards for my screenwriting. And I recently won an International Literary Award for my most recent book, Jill. So I seem to have figured it out after a bit of a slow start, self-educated on how to get to this point. And I have focused mostly in terms of genre around horror. Although I do have a series of other books that are more thriller, action-oriented, including a couple of romantic thrillers. So my most recent one, Jill, is a dark noir thriller set in 1953 post-war Tokyo, Japan. So no horror, although there's the horrors of war in the book, or post-war. But it's not the same as some of my other series, including the one we're going to talk about today, The Plague Judgment Day. So that's part of a trilogy of books. First 2 are written, the first 2 film scripts and film plans are written. The third one to be called Judgment Day, The Final Journey, is in the works, and I'm intending to get it out sometime early next year. And that kind of, I guess, I'm married with 2 kids. There you go. I got a dog and a cat. So I've covered all the bases.
Yeah. So the book is called The Plague Judgment Day. It is book 1.
Yes.
I love the way you intro it, because you're like, what if some of the things they told you about in church actually happened? Regardless of what your religious basis is, what if some of those things actually happened here in the world? Well, they did. Now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So talk just a little bit about, first of all, where you even came up with the book.
So I have this very creative mind, it turns out. And I get a lot of inspiration from dreams. So I have very vivid dreams. It turns out, I found out a few years back through testing of my daughter that I'm actually on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. So there's this sort of natural buzz going on in my head all the time. And one morning I woke up and I had this vision through the dream overnight of a group of people being trapped somewhere inside while the world's breaking down outside. And it's this concept of, am I okay or better off here than being out there? It's that, challenge at the individual level, right? So I've got comfort here. I've got protection. We're in this barricaded environment. We've got food for some time. Or I feel the calling of my family. Do I take the risk and try and go and find them and find shelter together with them? And so this is the battle. And to your point about sort of the church sermons, I'm Irish Catholic and went to Catholic school. And I still remember being, I would say, kind of haunted by this Judgment Day concept, right? How would I fare? Right? What's going to happen? How does this take place? And I write a lot of pre-apocalyptic stories. I find the post-apocalyptic, things like The Walking Dead. I mean, they're terrific stories, but they have no real goal, right? They don't have an end point. They just keep carrying on. And I wanted to write something that I could kind of bring to a conclusion. So came in a dream, thought about it a lot, went back to my childhood and the memories I had of Sunday school and fire and brimstone, which was really hammered into us, right? And I created something that I felt was representative of our world today. And the fact that whatever messaging we received through, the Bible and other forms of documents such as that, we fiddled with over the years, right? So whatever was provided to us 2,000 plus years ago, it's not representative. Today's versions of things are not representative, perhaps, of what was provided as guidance. In my story, I believe that we were provided guidance to this coming event and didn't heed it well. Let's leave it at that. So there you go. It kind of gives you the Cole's note summary of sort of how the story came about.
Oh, I love that. So we jump into the story, and the world is not in a good place. Some of us remember 2020 and we're like, is this a little bit too true? You know what I'm saying? But,
Yeah.
uh, you know, of course, a person has to get the book in order to be able to know all of it. But tell me, what is your favorite part of the book? Is it, where you start out and set it up, or is it kind of more in the middle with stuff that's going on?
So the first part's ominous, right? So there's this event occurring. The world has transitioned through its movement in space into a area of dark matter. So the dark matter is what's triggering all this event to occur. So I'm kind of marrying religious beliefs with the realities of our modern universe, right? And our knowledge of the universe. We have a God particle, so why not a devil particle? And that's kind of what I introduce into the story. So the first part's ominous. It's the build up. I really like the middle section, and the reason I like the middle section is because now you're into something like the movie 2012 or Greenland, where you've got this action, you've got movement, you've got building sort of terror around, and it's how the characters within the story interact with those risks. A lot of it is instinct. I'm being chased, I'm going to run. But some of it, when you stop running and you think about, what should I be doing? And why is this happening? And why is it affecting me? And how is it affecting me both emotionally, spiritually? And do I want to carry on? I mean, you have to ask that question sometimes. Do I really want to carry on? I remember my daughter once said, "You wouldn't last an hour." And if we had a zombie world, she said, "Why would I want to?" And that's a good point. I never really thought about it. Do we carry on for the sake of carrying on, or are we trying to achieve something? And this is the challenge that sort of goes through the middle of the book, and people facing their own demons, which has become book 2, Demons Judgment Day. So I kind of like the middle. I like the excitement, to build up the action, the movement, the thrill, the chase. And in the end, I feel the end rounds the story out well. I've had some people who didn't like the ending, but hey, not everybody likes everything, right? That's why we have different car colors and types.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the book is designed so that you could just read it, but it is part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
How do you leave the reader so that they really do want to read book 2, which we'll be talking about here in a couple of weeks?
Well, if you enjoyed the story, the thrill, the fun, like what I write, I write quick-paced thrillers, effectively, with the horror genre. So if you've enjoyed the story, and it more or less ends there for this particular group, Demons gives you opportunity to revisit it with a different set of people in a different environment. So Demons takes place in Las Vegas. And so you imagine it's Judgment Day and you're in Sin City. Probably not many worse places to be than that. And this one the second one focuses more on the idea that you're not only are you battling this event that's occurring outside the walls or outside in the world, you're battling your own inner demons. We've all sinned and we've all dealt with emotionally. How do we deal with, how do we absorb, how do we live with the things we've done in life? And that's what Demons is more about. So you get an opportunity to revisit the crux of the story, where the plague takes place on the West Coast in the San Francisco area. Demons is Vegas, so it's a little bit more west. And what's happening overall in the trilogy is this darkness, which is really being triggered by Earth's movement within a dark matter patch in the universe. It's moving from west to east. So as it moves east, I'm creating more stories. The third one will be, as I said, Judgment Day, the final voyage, is going to take place in New York. So it's the furthest east on the coast. And it is going to take place mostly on a freighter that gets stolen, and a group of people, a very diverse group of people, heading towards Africa, staying just barely ahead of this darkness. So the other books will give you an opportunity to revisit that world and what's occurring in that world, but through a different set of eyes.
Oh, I love that. So, totally different book, but similar to the concept of what they did with Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead, where they jump
Yep.
into the same universe, but in a totally different area with a whole new group of people.
Yep. Yeah. There you go.
Mhm.
That's the, and it's, I mean, I didn't invent anything there. I mean, it's been done many times, and it's generally it's a successful theme. If you enjoy the first part, why not seek out? That's why they make sequels, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the book is intended to be a fun, entertaining, maybe even a little scary read,
Yep.
because it is horror genre. But did you have any other intentionality behind it? I mean, are there things you want people to take away from the reading it, or were you just intending to entertain?
I think what I probably inadvertently intended, because it forced me to think about my own life as well. And I'm not saying live by the Ten Commandments, but are you satisfied if the end were tomorrow? Are you satisfied with who you are and what you've done? And I think part of that was a result of the change in my life, right? So walking away from a very well-paid, successful executive career to make nothing, writing books. Now that's changed, but I wasn't. I looked at myself, and I thought about that when I was doing the book. I looked at myself and I said, if the end came tomorrow, did I achieve what I believe I could have achieved in this world in this lifetime? So a little bit of thought, right? You'll see some of the characters challenged with family, some not, some being very independent types, and there's a kind of a deeper story as you go through of the main character who's separated from his wife and his two daughters, and his search and feelings towards, he asks himself in the story, do I really want to be there at the end when they die? Or is it better that I don't know, right? So ongoing questions from the morality perspective. And as a father of two daughters, I mean, I thought a lot about this as I was writing the story. And my personal feeling, I would like to be there.
I love that. Well, the book is available today on Amazon for free, the ebook. And of course, you can get it in print as well. I am going to go ahead while we're talking and drop the link in so that if a person wants to get the book and they didn't see it in the description, you can see it down in the comments now. Before I let you go, just give us a word of encouragement about, being able to read the book and have something that's both fun as well as maybe a little scary to get to be able to read.
Yeah, it's like everything I write. The point to it is an escape, right? So you sit on an airplane, you get a 4-hour flight. You want to escape. So what I write is very visual oriented, and I do that intentionally because I then convert it or adapt it to screen. And I've got these two, The Plague and Demons, are in the early stages of production, pre-production. So I expect that they will be movies within the next 18 to 24 months. And again, the idea is I don't want to watch a movie today. I want to escape my world around me. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to absorb myself into this world and this story. And what I've been told by people is that my style of writing is a little bit different. And it causes you to have a difficult time putting the book down. So I guess the way I start and wrap chapters is like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna read a couple more chapters. I'm gonna read a couple more chapters. So, and if you're doing that, it's because you're enjoying the story, right? And you're enjoying the escape that you're getting. As I like to say, you get a 3 to 5 hour escape for the price of a cup of coffee.
Absolutely love it. And I love those kind of books too, because then, I mean, other than the fact that you end up being, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and you haven't gone to bed when you should have, it's totally worth it. Well, the book is called The Plague Judgment Day. As I said, it is available on Amazon by author Sean O'Neill. Sean, I appreciate you having written the book, and thanks for being on the show here with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, and I look forward to our next conversation.
What a great book, a fun book, and a really amazing way of looking, for those of us that were raised in church, looking at some of the things that are talked about in Revelations in a really different way and saying, hey, even with the way that John was trying to describe them. What if it happened this way? And then looking at the world, and how would you really fare? How would you do? I know some of us had that same thought process during 2020, and it's like, what if the world is coming to an end? What would we do? How would we fare? How has my life been so far? And what kind of things would I like to see be different? What can you come up with? What kind of cool stuff might you be able to create when you take a new look at things? Maybe in that new look at things, you'll be able to see some stuff and be like, hey, there's some ways that I want to live my life a little differently. And I really want to. And I really hope that you enjoyed it. And I do hope that you got the book, because it is such an amazingly great book. If you haven't gotten it yet, get The Plague Judgment Day by Sean O'Neill. It's available on Amazon or wherever you buy books. With that said, let's jump into our first commercial here on Thriving Entrepreneur. Don't go away. Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a third-generation minister, an international best-selling author of multiple books, and I help people write, publish, and market their books to bestseller. In fact, there are literally thousands of people that have used the system that I created to be able to write, publish, and market their books, and now they're best-selling authors. And you're next. I just wanted to come on for a minute, say hi to you, tell you a little bit about me, introduce myself, and tell you I know the world is waiting on your message, and I would be so honored to be part of sharing your message with the world. Go to AskSteveKidd.com and schedule a time to talk today. This is Steve. Welcome back. Thanks for listening to Thriving Entrepreneur today as we talk and take a look at a new look at things. What are some ways that you can do the same old stuff in a different way? What are some stories that you know that when you looked at them in just a little different way could be some cool, fun, new, exciting stories? What are some ways that you can take existing things you know and leverage them in a new way to be able to make the world a better place? That's what we're going to talk about here with our next guest. I hope that you will really listen in, see how your company might be able to participate in this as we take a new look at things here on Thriving Entrepreneur. With that, let's jump into our next guest. Join me in welcoming Simon Sheila-Bakes. Hey, Simon, how you doing today?
Hi, Steve. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. Thanks for being with us here today. Start us off by telling us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
So I am an academic entrepreneur, originally from Belgium, but been living and working in Singapore for the past decade. I'm a professor at a business school here, as well as a founder of two sustainability-focused startups, one nonprofit that does mangrove restoration, and one social enterprise for-profit that works on the intersection of digitization and positive impact in the world.
So a lot of people have different viewpoints on what is positive impact, what is sustainability. Can you kind of frame that for us, how you view that?
Absolutely. So I think most of what companies currently are focused on when it comes to sustainability is the reduction of negative impact, specifically negative climate impacts, which is, of course, a very big topic. And that's very important for a reasonably large group of companies, but it's not something that every company in the world can really do much about. So what we are focusing on in my organization, which is called Handprint, is the creation of positive impact in the world, like things that are just quantifiably and demonstrably good for the world. And that could be as broad as supporting access to education and access to, let's say, the internet, as well as planting trees or restoring corals or removing plastic from the ocean. So we're focused on these kind of activities that typically happen outside of the value chain of companies and that support the work mainly of nonprofits and sometimes also social enterprises that are trying to do something that strongly aligns and supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
And so with that said, what kind of specific things can businesses do to be part of that and help out with that?
So the main thing that we've really discovered over the last 4 years of working is a massive opportunity for business is to integrate this kind of positive impact. And again, you can think about supporting education or planting trees, whatever you want, but integrate that into how a business interacts with its main stakeholders, customers, as well as employees. And if you can integrate some kind of credible contribution to a good cause into your interactions, then you kind of change the relationship between the business and that stakeholder. And that can have very strong positive effects. So a very simple example of this would be for an e-commerce store, you can integrate something like restoring corals into your checkout process. And by visualizing that and showing this to your customer at the critical time when they're making a decision, am I leaving this in the cart or am I actually going to buy this? If they see that something good is going to happen when they buy, it changes their behavior and it increases the likelihood that they will actually buy. And so they can support business growth. And so this approach is really what Handprint focuses on. And we're doing this now in retail banking. We're doing this in advertising. We're doing this in kind of customer and employee nudging to develop or experiment with new technology. So in a wide variety of use cases where we can kind of work on this on the persuasion element of customers and employees. And we found that doing something good in the world as a business is a really powerful tool to get people to do something that you want them to do.
Okay, we talked about what we can do. Let's take a minute and talk about what are some of the things that are easy to do, or rather easy to stop doing that we could begin to not do.
Sure. So I think for most companies, like the stuff that's pretty easy to do is like the basic things around reducing your environmental impact, right? That can go as like, well, let's buy green energy if it's available, doesn't really change anything about how you run your business, potentially reducing travel, all of those kind of things. And these are really classic approaches to sustainability, which can be pretty useful, but the focus always on doing less and doing stuff is not very aspirational. It's not something that's really innate to business, which is always about doing more and abundance and becoming bigger. And so I think that the classic approach to sustainability, which really focuses on you shouldn't do this, and this, is not something that inspires a lot of people for the long run. And so, my focus is really on the flip side of that equation and really saying like you can do more, you can do positive things. And for companies, that's really easy because if you really want to have a big impact on the sustainability space, then you'd have to potentially radically transform the technology you're using to make it much more energy efficient, or radically transform your production process so that you don't produce waste anymore, or radically transform your design so that it's much easier to take your product apart after its end of life and kind of remove all of the toxic metals and minerals that might be in there. These things are incredibly hard to do, and they are important. But doing something as simple as saying we're going to tie our business KPIs, whether that's revenue, whether that's attention, eyeballs, whatever that is, ears in a podcast, we're going to tie those KPIs and those success metrics to doing something good is very easy. And I think it's part of why it's so powerful, because it's just something that any company, whether you're a single person organization or you've got 100,000 employees, any company can do this. And as a consequence, create a massive change if we would all do this together.
I really wonder sometimes what kind of an impact could we make if everybody just did one thing for just one day? You know, I mean, and I'm not saying then just stop it and not do it ever, but imagine the cool impact that could happen if one day everybody did one really good thing, just for that day.
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, right? If you think about this kind of at scale, right? Of course, if everybody does something once, that can be pretty impactful, but it's not going to change the world, right? Even if everyone commits to whatever, it's vegan Friday for everyone, or no plastic Saturday, whatever. Doing this for one day doesn't create the movement that requires businesses or that incentivizes businesses to really change how they're going to approach their core processes. What I found really powerful is this idea that if you can convince two people to do something and you do it as well, and you say, you ask those two people, can you also convince two people to do the same? And on and on and on. Once you hit 30 degrees, so once you have go through that iteration of 30 times, you've touched 1 billion people. And I think that's really powerful. So if we can start by doing something as small as whatever, yeah, it could be a vegan Friday, or it could be, I'm going to finance the planting of a tree once a month. And we can convince two other people to do the same, and we can kind of put that movement in place. It only takes 30 iterations to change 1 billion people's behavior. And that's, I think, incredibly powerful. That's the power of small numbers and exponential change.
So let's talk for a second specifically about the kind of things that your company can come in and specifically do to help companies reach these kind of goals.
Yeah, so I think our main kind of tool that we've developed is what we call the Universal Impact API, which is a digital tool that can speak to any existing business process that has a digital fingerprint and link that to the creation of a handprint, the positive impact in the world. And companies can use that tool to design any kind of use case they want. And we always recommend that it has to be a use case that sits on the intersection of their business, so between the business and their key customers. So let me give you a quick example of this. We've got a client in the fintech space that specializes in the international movement of money. And they've recently announced a commitment to plant a mangrove tree for every 5,000 transactions that move through their system, through their kind of financial railways. And 2 weeks after they announced that, they won the prize for the most innovative sustainability concept in fintech. And I think that's just really interesting. Like, this is it's a sizable commitment, but it's a very simple thing for them to do, because they know we can take this into every sales conversation, and we can say, yes, you can go with our competitor, but we are better for this and this reason. Oh, and by the way, every time you move money through our system, we're going to do something good in the world, and that's going to be thanks to you. That's a sales argument everywhere in the world these days. And doing this is very simple because it also perfectly aligns with the organization's strategic growth objectives, because they make money when they move money. And so by activating their kind of core KPI, which is the number of transactions, and turning that into something that creates a positive impact, they're growing their business while also doing something good in the world. And yeah, we've seen similar kind of use cases emerge in retail banking, in advertising industry, in the transport industry, like loads of industries. So I think that's really the power of what our technology can do, and why companies are, especially companies on the vanguard of sustainability, are looking to embrace this kind of approach. Because for many companies as well, they already do this kind of stuff. And many companies have kind of, especially in the US, they've got their large corporate philanthropy programs, they've got large CSR programs, but it's all kind of done in silos. It's isolated from the core business processes. And as a consequence, very few people really know about it. And therefore, it doesn't influence the key stakeholders that drive the success of the company. And by just making that small change, you can actually repurpose your existing budgets without really increasing them, but you can make you can create a lot more value and capture a lot more value from doing these good things you're already doing. And that's, I think, really promising for a capitalist world where businesses are trying to succeed and compete and get one over on each other. If positive impact can be used to achieve those goals, then we've really solved a critical issue in sustainability and in business in general.
Perfect. Well, do tell us again the URL of where we can connect with you.
Yeah, so our website is handprint.tech, and you can also connect with me on email or on LinkedIn. If you manage to write my last name correctly, it should be easy enough to find me.
Maybe spell your last name for us.
I can do that. It's SCHILLEBEECKX. And yes, that is not a mistake. That is exactly how it's written.
I love it. Well, Simon, thanks so much for all the things you do for the world and in the world. And thanks for being a guest here on the show with us here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Steve. Have a good day.
Check out handprint.tech and see if there might be some ways that your business can leverage what you're already doing or do things just a little different, taking a new look at things and find some cool and innovative ways that your company could do the same stuff you're doing, maybe in a new and even better way, and how you can live as a thriving entrepreneur. With that said, let's go into our second commercial break here on Thriving Entrepreneur. Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a third-generation minister, an international best-selling author of multiple books, and I help people write, publish, and market their books to bestseller. In fact, there are literally thousands of people that have used the system that I created to be able to write, publish, and market their books, and now they're best-selling authors. And you're next. I just wanted to come on for a minute, say hi to you, tell you a little bit about me, introduce myself, and tell you I know the world is waiting on your message, and I would be so honored to be part of sharing your message with the world. Go to AskSteveKidd.com and schedule a time to talk today. This is Steve. Welcome back. Thanks for listening to Thriving Entrepreneur today. Today we're taking a new look at things. We are looking at how can stuff that maybe we already know or things that we've never contemplated, how by just simply looking at them can we come up with a new, better, maybe more powerful, definitely possibly more practical way of doing some of the things that are the same old things and some brand new things. We've talked with Sean, who shared with us a really cool book that is a new look at things. And then Simon shared with us ways to leverage, ways that they are leveraging data to help you really integrate some solutions to help the planet. And we've got one more really good, innovative approach here that we want to bring to you to help you take a new look at things and see how it might help your company out and help you live as a thriving entrepreneur. And with that said, let's jump in to our next guest here on Thriving Entrepreneur. Join me in welcoming Aaron Painter. Hey, Aaron, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Steve. It's great to be on.
It is so good to have you here with us. Start us off by telling us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yeah, I have a unique sort of career path, I guess, like all of us do, but much of mine was grounded in experiences outside the U.S. I spent most of the last 20 years of my career living and working in different parts of the world, 5.5 years in China, several years in Brazil, 4 years in France, 4 years in the UK. And so those experiences in different cultures and with different people and kind of ways of doing business have really shaped a lot of kind of who I am and a lot of the impact I've tried to have in the world.
So with all of those different countries you've been in, what have you found is the commonality? I mean, I know there's a lot of differences, obviously, but what's the commonality between being in those different places?
I was probably in a little bit more of a unique environment in that each of the countries I was in and the time and period where I was, and I operated in the tech or the IT ecosystem. I'd say one commonality was just a deep sense of curiosity, where people really wanted to understand different perspectives on what they were doing and maybe what I was seeing because I had immersed myself in so many other different cultures and places. People were very curious to understand how I saw things, how I saw what they were doing, feedback I had. But conversely, I was equally deeply curious on trying to understand how they saw things and what made kind of their culture way of solving problems unique. And so that kind of deep sense of curiosity, I think, probably permeated both sides.
So in the tech space, I mean, things are dashing ahead so fast always. And these days we're in the middle of how is the best way to secure your products, how to keep from people, collecting bad data. And then of course AI and deep fakes and all that kind of stuff. Do you find yourself ever overwhelmed, or are you far enough out on the cutting edge of things that you kind of know all these things are coming before the rest of the world has to deal with them?
Yeah, sometimes being an entrepreneur, being in tech means often looking a little bit ahead and sometimes living in a little bit of I like to say microcosm, but that sort of implies the ideals. And I think what we're seeing in today's world of cybersecurity in particular is we are not living in the ideal state. A lot of bad actors out there are taking advantage of new tools and techniques, particularly ones with AI and the ability to create deep fakes, that has made it very difficult for good actors to compete. And so I'd say we live a little bit in the future, but we've been able to build a sort of a product and a business around solving a very present need for today. But hopefully are arming companies with tools that they can use to compete with sort of bad actors that are using kind of the most advanced technologies out there.
It's so interesting because simultaneously we have the concept of the ability to make really cool new content from our own stuff that is really similar, at least, to what people that are making deepfakes would do to then trick people with stuff. How can we take advantage of some of the cool tools that allow us to do videos and stuff like that? Without opening ourselves up into problems with somebody then being able to steal that and make a video or con some of our relatives, or all the different kind of things that people are doing with that.
Yeah, I think AI, for the sake of AI, competing with it is kind of an arms race. There will be bad actors that use tools to create deep fakes, and trying to counter that with the same technologies that the bad actors are using will be literally just an arms race of who gets there first. And I don't think that positions people very well for success. I am a big advocate that in this world of our sort of creator economy and where we're all posting, videos and photos and, maybe our profiles or our thoughts online, it's ever more important that platforms know who the person is. They know the actual identity of the human behind the screen, because that person can then take some sort of accountability for what they post or what they share, and whether they happen to be creating and sharing something that is genuine or that is some sort of an AI generated fake or even piece of work. I believe strongly in this need to authenticate the person sort of behind the screen as a way to know what's real and what's not.
You opened up such a can of worms there, because there are so many really basic authentication tools that drive me crazy. So let's see how you feel about them. I mean, it used to be CAPTCHA, and now a lot of people are moving to, two-step verification kind of systems. What are your thoughts on those kind of things?
Yeah, CAPTCHA was a really good invention when it came out, and there's some great stories about kind of how they got started. But it's almost 20 years ago, and CAPTCHA became sort of this default way for people to put a little bit of a test behind, is this person likely human that we're engaging with online? Assuming that worked and assuming that met today's challenges around deep fakes, it falls short because you still don't know which human it is that you're engaging with.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I think we're often seeing today is that as companies have tried to make sort of accounts more secure, particularly digital accounts, think your username and your password, we've added layers of multi-factor authentication. we're not quite sure if your password might have been compromised, or this is maybe a particularly important account. Let's add some form of send you a text message, or maybe ask you to install kind of an authenticator app and get kind of a revolving PIN code. And those have been necessary layers, particularly because passwords have sort of outlived their usefulness too, and that they are too easy for a bad actor to sort of find a way around. But the challenge that's become so just common, unfortunately, particularly in the last several months, has been all those layers of multi-factor authentication are easy to get around if you simply are human or pretend that you are the human whose account you're trying to access. Meaning, if you've set up multi-factor authentication, there really isn't a way to reset it when you lose your phone, upgrade your phone, or a variety of kind of things happen in your life. You typically call customer support or you call an IT help desk in your workplace and say, hey, I am locked out. I upgraded my phone. I got a new phone. And that authenticator app maybe that I set up, it's no longer working. And when that conversation happens, that poor help desk rep who kind of got into the business probably trying to help people is unfortunately stuck being an identity detective and often reverts to things like security questions, which I know infuriate me, probably infuriate you. What's your favorite color? What street did you live on in 19 whatever? And unfortunately, those questions are either difficult to answer and cause kind of memory strain for a lot of people, or more commonly, they're too easy to answer because the answers to them have already been revealed by some other company in a data breach. And so our best defenses of adding things like multi-factor authentication to protect an account quickly get circumvented when all you have to do is call and pretend that you're the account owner and that you're locked out.
I have such an amazing example of that for you. So a friend of mine had her identity stolen, and then the person got into her email. And let me start off by saying you shouldn't do any of these things, okay? Just for basic security. But in her email, they were able to find things like that she had emailed her social security number. So they ended up having her driver's license number and her social security number. And they actually were able to even call a police officer and verify to the police's satisfaction that they were indeed her, when in point of fact, it wasn't her at all. And, and all kinds of chaos, kind of went from there. So I see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry your friend went through that. Interestingly, it was very much a similar story that inspired me to start NameTag several years ago. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had several friends and family members whose essentially identities were stolen because, as we all remember, everything sort of went digital. And by going digital, it meant you couldn't go into the branch or into the store. And as we start to see this happening, I see I'm going to be a good friend. I'm going to be a good son. Let's jump on the phone. Let's call these companies and straighten things out. And every place we called asked us a series of kind of silly security questions. And that was their only protection for our account. And it turns out that, someone else had called before we did, answered those questions, and was able to take over our accounts. And like you mentioned, so much of our lives now lives digitally, whether that's our email account or other important accounts in our lives, depending on, if we're in the social media business, it might be our social media account. It's probably certainly our bank account. It might be our marketing CRM in the business world, whole variety of things. But those accounts and how they are protected really comes down to, unfortunately, very simple things like answers to these sort of silly questions that kind of almost anyone with a little bit of effort can answer.
I think maybe more than anything else, my question for you is how often are people doing really deeply nefarious things like TV wants to make us afraid of to get our information? And how often is it just, we did something relatively not so smart ourselves? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, sometimes, we rely on technology to help us when we make silly mistakes. So it's possible maybe you clicked on something or you opened an email or you were, rightfully duped. I mean, that stuff happens a lot. But that's where you need at least more advanced methods of security or of authentication. And unfortunately, it is just happening too often. I think when we saw, end of last year, starting in late August, actually, MGM, Las Vegas, the casinos, the hospitality company, one we all know of at least, they went very public in saying that they had sort of a breach of their infrastructure that happened this exact way. A bad actor, it turns out, researched an employee on LinkedIn and then called the IT help desk at MGM and said they were that employee. They couldn't access their account. Their authenticator wasn't working. The help desk rep, asked a few questions and reset their account. And it turns out the bad actor was then able to go in and cause an enormous amount of damage, essentially taking that whole business offline for days and days, and people couldn't check into their hotels and everything else. And then that just continued. Once one bad actor got very known for doing that, that same group and now others, by some estimates, have targeted hundreds and hundreds of companies just in the last few months, basically doing the same thing. Caesars Entertainment was next, and then Clorox was next and disrupted their whole supply chain of products. It's just shocking to see how, unfortunately, easy this is. Not a high-tech thing we call social engineering. Calling and pretending to be someone and answering questions is not a high-tech activity, but it can have enormous impact.
So let's talk specifically about name tag. How does that solve the problem for us?
Well, we grounded ourselves in traditional experiences, kind of offline experiences that seem to work. And I have to think about it when, let's say, you go to the airport and you go through TSA in the US, and they check your boarding pass, but more importantly, they check your ID, and they might put it through sort of a scanner, and that's a hardware-based thing, and someone's looking at it, and security person is comparing your photo to how you look in person, and they're letting you through. They put you through a metal detector, but in theory, once you're inside that airport, you're in kind of a secure bubble zone. Similarly, you might go to an event and you register and you check in, and you might give them your business card and you show them your ID, and they give you, coincidentally, a name tag maybe that you wear around your neck. And you can trust that everybody you meet inside that event or that conference has kind of been vouched for. Someone's verified them to say, yeah, this is actually their name and this is probably where they work. And you can sort of create trust. But yet there's so many communities in today's world where we can't do that online. Some of the obvious ones are like dating apps. It's kind of crazy. You're going to meet someone online, and if it all goes well, you're going to go meet up in person. But yet most of those companies do very little to confirm the identity of the person behind that account. And you end up with things like the Tinder swindler and these shows and things on TV. So what we found is that there is a way to ask someone for their government issued ID and to take a selfie, and to do it in a way that's novel, meaning using your mobile phone. Because when you use your mobile phone to do that, you're able to take advantage of all these cryptographic benefits, these security features that are built into mobile phones. When we take that selfie, we're able to take a three-dimensional selfie, for example, to make sure that the person is human, and compare that with a whole bunch of other data to say, hey, does it match up to this government ID that they're presenting? So the idea is of using an ID and what the person looks like is not new. It's been around for, since early documents and ID documents have existed. The last 10 years plus, they've existed for financial institutions to help you open accounts remotely, but they haven't been able to prevent fraud until they went to these sort of experience on a mobile phone. And that's what we created as a first with NameTag.
I love that. So how usable is it for the average company? I mean, do you need to be a relatively big company to be able to adopt it, or can a small company afford to be able to add NameTag to what they're doing?
One of our customers recently, this kind of public TV appearance, and they said, we were already paying for this in our help desk. Basically, the numbers of people that were getting locked out were costing us a fortune in help desk cost. And so they said, hey, we deployed NameTag actually to save us money and to increase security. And I'd say that's pretty common across what we're finding. Most companies, once they've implemented things like multi-factor authentication, either for their employee accounts or maybe for their customer accounts, they usually see a corresponding increase in the cost of their help desk or their support tickets. And so by deploying NameTag, it actually becomes a big cost saver. And that works for companies really of any size. Most of our companies today are larger enterprises, but it works whenever we really have something high value, be it, again, that employee account, even or a customer account that you want to protect. Because if it's a high value digital asset, then you probably put things like multi-factor authentication in place. And then you probably have people that are locked out, and you need to really verify that it's them before you let them back in.
I love that. Well, so for people who have a company of that size, how can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you?
Well, we read a lot about this. We follow a lot of these recent security breaches. We talk a lot about the evolution of deep fakes and some of the ways that people, present deep fakes into tricking technology systems. And we do a lot of it on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's a great place for content, or our website, of course, getnametag.com, where we publish a lot of useful content, hopefully for people that are just trying to stay one step ahead of this industry and frankly, to help create more secure environments for the users in their space.
Well, give us again the URL for us to be able to contact with you.
You bet. Getnametag.com. GTnametag.com.
I love that. Just before I let you go, just let us know, give us some kind of an idea how real, how possible is it to have a security for our most valuable information that we can really rely on?
It's something that a company can implement same day. You can immediately begin securing your help desk with a better tool. You don't need to pre-enroll your users. The average experience for an end user takes about 23 seconds on their first go around. And so it's something that you can stand up right away with no technical integration and basically just send more secure verification requests at those sort of moments that matter when you need to make sure you know who the human is behind the screen.
Aaron, thanks so much for what you're doing, and thanks for being a guest here with us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Are you like me? Do you hate CAPTCHA? I mean, maybe you love it. Maybe you think it's fun. It drives me insane. And I so enjoyed this conversation with Aaron because I am glad that they're looking at some new and innovative ways and some ways to reimagine how can we keep things secure, because they do need to be, but in a way that really makes intelligent sense. That also doesn't drive the end user crazy. And I think sometimes when we look at cybersecurity, we forget the fact that people still have to use that crazy thing. And how can we still make it easy for them too? It's a wonderful new look at things. And I love the technology that Aaron has and his company has brought out. I need you to understand through all of the things you've heard here today, that really what I'd like for you to do is learn from it. Absolutely check out the book, the companies, all of those kind of things. But I also want you to be able to be introspective. I want you to look at what are you doing in this world. Take a new look at things in your own life and see with just that little bit of perspective how things can be a little better, a little more powerful, or even just more innovative to make things that you're already doing be even better possibly, or have a better reach or a different impact or those kind of things. What is taking a new look at things going to do for you today as you bring yourself into the world? Because you are uniquely brilliant. You were created for a purpose, and the world needs you. That doesn't mean that when you take a new look at things, you need to change who you are. But sometimes you can find new and cool ways to bring you out into the world, to share who you are with the world in a new and inventive way, because the world needs you. We want you to share all of who you are to make the difference that only you can make while it's called today, and to live your life as a thriving entrepreneur. Till we're together again next time, have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Thriving Entrepreneur today. If you want to get your question answered, send an email to questions@wehelpyouthrive.com. We look forward to you joining us again next time.
Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a third-generation minister, an international best-selling author of multiple books, and I help people write, publish, and market their books to bestseller. In fact, there are literally thousands of people that have used the system that I created to be able to write, publish, and market their books, and now they're best-selling authors. And you're next. I just wanted to come on for a minute, say hi to you, tell you a little bit about me, introduce myself, and tell you I know the world is waiting on your message, and I would be so honored to be part of sharing your message with the world. Go to AskSteveKid.com and schedule a time to talk today.